Hi, this is Cate and welcome. This is a recording on awakeningtogether.org. Thanks Jackie and Ken for everything you do, and everyone else at Awakening Together. Deep gratitude for your programs and everything that the helpfulness and the love that all these shows come through. I'm also recording this on a video, so I think Awakening Together put this recording up on their website, but it will also be available under my YouTube name, Cate Greaves. So good evening, good morning, wherever you are. And I was just listening to a really good reading from Deanna Stanley's book. She was reading out of her book, and it was really beautiful, very clear and very concise. So many minds have got this beautiful wisdom and beautiful ways of expressing and helping us understand. Just everyone, we're all going home together, aren't we? We're all joining hands. And even the minds that seem to not be openly interested in a spiritual path, they are helped by us when we get into that stillness. They can't help but be helped, because when we're more awake, and this path, it does take a long time and it does take dedication and devotion. And yes, some minds wake up very easily, but sometimes it's a long trek. And it's, the Course describes it as a journey of no distance to a place you've never left. But it feels at times like it is a journey of distance, and that's okay. And I like what Downer says about, it's very easy to be thinking that it's some big awakening, is some big moment. And I think if we didn't have spiritual teachers and texts to go back to, we would probably just awaken and just not even have a name for it, and just start living in a different mind, and it would just be what it is. You would just awaken gradually to seeing the world differently. But these days we can go back and listen and say, oh yes, that's happened. But what we do is we say it's happened to me, or it happened to my mind. But eventually it does accumulate to just being more. Actually, for my mind, it's so normal and so ordinary. It even, hang on, excuse me. It even seems funny to talk about it, because it feels like the most natural, ordinary thing in the world. It really feels, I remember Paul Hederman saying dog shit awareness. In other words, is very plain, there's nothing special. And I remember when I was studying the course, there was a section talking about, oh, you know, you'll see light around bodies. And I never saw that. And I'm like, oh, I've missed something. I didn't have that light experience. And then I realised, you know, your path, I just thought my path is my path. I'm just not going to try to let the ego tell me, oh, you didn't get something. You didn't have that. Others did. So what I saw was the path to my mind to awakening was very, very different to anyone else's. Happy people appear light. Yeah, I guess what the light thing was that I had this idea that I'd just start seeing people in light forms rather than their bodies, but I did actually have some sort of light thing happen, but I just thought I'm not going to start labelling these things. What I'm most interested in is to be free of suffering in my mind. And that was really the one thing that was the devotion or the drive or the commitment. I want to be free of the suffering. And that's what led me to A Course in Miracles. That's what drove me to completely dedicate myself to its teachings and to completely immerse myself in it and do the lessons properly and read the text and meditate. And I was just thinking this morning, because it's the morning in Australia here, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, it's 6 p.m. on the show, and I get up early and I meditate. And I've got a lot of course friends that say, oh, you don't need to meditate, you don't need to do that. Well, I do what's best for my mind. I don't listen to anyone else because that's their journey. So I encourage you to do what you need to do and don't compare. Don't listen to anyone else in terms of what I'm talking about is when other minds say, oh, the Course says this, you don't need to do that, you know, just stop thinking, you know, stuff like that. And I love what Dana said. I really connected into a lot of what she was saying. It brought up a lot of how when I was studying the Course, is there is times where something comes up and you are easily able to drop it. And there are other times where you can't drop it. It's something that keeps coming back and bothering you and upsetting your mind. And then it's time for inquiry, whether you, whatever you do a process on it. And what I've started to see is like it's a tool belt. You have like a carpenter's tool belt and you've got a hammer, a chisel, all the different tools that they have. And this is what we're carrying around. And one of them is meditation. One of them is inquiry. One of them might be listening to a course teacher or something on YouTube. Whatever it is, you've got a whole set of tools and you will know in that moment, it will come into your mind because the answer's already there in terms of what you need to do to shift it. It might be to ring a friend and express and just say, can you hold the space for me? While I express this, I'm putting it on the altar to the Holy Spirit I want to see, I want to hear myself speak. I want to hear what's lying behind it because it's hiding in my mind. The grievance is hiding, whatever it is. And so we have to have this tool belt, and everyone's tool belt will be different. Some will use tapping. Some will use running. You know, they might feel that they get a lot out of running or walking, or it's every mind goes home differently. So your mind is your project. It's like you're the scientist and your project is you only need to be a scientist if you're upset. If you're feeling good, if your mind's at peace, if you're content and happy and peaceful, then you don't need to do any inquiry. If you're, all you need to do is do the inquiry when you get upset or go out of peace, and you do have to have a sense of devotion and commitment to this path, and that seems to change things. And some minds have mystical experiences and some don't, but they're just experiences and they come and go and they are beautiful, but to continually talk about them is not helpful in terms of to tell people, oh, I had this mystical experience, it was really wonderful. This mind is ever deepening, it's infinite. So where I'm at in my mind, my prayer is take me deeper. This is awakening. Yes, there's sort of a sense of an awakened mind in terms of that it's peaceful, that it's got clarity, that it's thoughtless, thoughtless in the way that the past doesn't colour the present. The beliefs have been seen through. So yes, there's for me it was, my focus was always on undoing my beliefs, and that was where my grievances, my beliefs, that was my main focus was and you know, this my path was a Course in Miracles. So what happens is every lesson is a part of a holographic teaching. So it's like, can you imagine, a jigsaw puzzle, and every aspect of the course is a piece of the puzzle. And when you're doing the lessons, your mind is he's presenting different aspects of the puzzle to you. And what happens is, as each part of the puzzle starts to become sort of accepted into the right mind, it starts to illuminate. What finally happens is that it all fits together. It just snaps into place. But at the beginning, it goes bit by bit. So you might be out walking your dog, or sitting quietly, or meditating, or as Diana talked, she was putting on some mascara. It drops in at times when you don't expect it. And what I always felt was that when you're reading any spiritual text, A Course in Miracles, or any spiritual book, that's a very clear path. it's the chewing of the food. And then what's required is the swallowing and the digestion. So that's why it's really important to have those breaks, to have times where you go and either do a hobby. Sometimes I would even get clarity, aha moments watching television, but it was only when it was guided, because I stayed away from TV, radio and newspapers for many years during my period of undoing. But occasionally I would feel prompted by that still small voice. And so we have to follow the guidance. We can't say that watching television is bad, because there might be something something on the television that spirit wants to use to help you undo something. So it's really everything has a purpose. And so what I would encourage you to do is to not compare. Have your own path. Have your own devotion to your mind. Devote yourself to your mind. You can't help anyone with their mind awakening, their mind training, unless you have seen through your own false thoughts, false beliefs. Try not to be the unhealed healer. Just dedicate your whole life to the atonement, which is the correction. So if we're upset, we need correction, and you've got your tool belt. So it's very simple in a way. It's not easy, but it's simple. You notice when you're upset, you get quiet, you say, okay, I've got a job to do, I'm upset, I'm not going to let this pass. Now at that particular time when you're upset, you may not have the actual time, you might be in a group of people where you can't look at it. As you get better and better at this process, forgiveness can be quite instant. The minute you have a thought, it's released and you're back to peace. Sometimes it's not. So really it's just about you being dedicated to your mind. Dedicated in terms of I'm going to devote myself to the healing of my mind, and that's going to be my one purpose. So that's a really good overview of the path. You've got so many teachers, so many books, YouTube clips these days of helpful. There's so much around. You don't have to get on a plane and go to India and sit in an ashram and sit in front of an Indian teacher and meditate for 12 hours a day and just have a who am I. They were beautiful processes. That was they were great, but Jesus says in the Course we don't have to do that anymore. This path, the Course in Miracles path, is one of the quickest ways. It's really bringing your mind. It's giving you a full description of what the ego is, because you need to understand clearly what the ego mind is before we're a scientist. We need to know what we're working on. We have to say, when we start on this path, especially for me, I didn't even know what my thoughts were. I didn't know what I was thinking half the time, and I didn't know that I could be, or there was, an observer of thoughts. I had no idea. I was completely unaware. And I believe that's really the first aspect of the path, is just having a sense that I'm not these thoughts, and that's meditation is part of it. Doesn't mean you have to meditate. If you find that you don't need to meditate, then don't do it. Do what works for you. Because what you've got to feel in is the Holy Spirit in your mind, which is your right mind. There's like a still small voice, which is what Adi Shanti's was talking about before in his little phrase about the still small voice that's directing you. It knows what you need. And even when you listen to other people's stories of awakening, that's their path. Your path will be what it is. And the Course in Miracles says that it's already, the date or the time of your awakening is already set. So all we can do, you can be in a great amount of peace, even without having that sort of sense of self dropping away. In that moment where it's sort of, you can feel it's a real sense of something different, but it's quite uneventful in a way. It's more of it's just like an aha moment. So I think it's very important to not compare, not think, oh, I'm reading this author. You're reading that author. Oh, that author must be better than this author. No, your mind will be attracted to the right teaching, to the right books, to the right YouTube teachers. The Holy Spirit knows in your mind, your right mind is directing you to the right people. And if a teacher that lots and lots, thousands of people love and you don't resonate with, just drop it. That person's not for you. There's someone else. So what I think it's coming down to is this real deep trust in your journey, in your way, and it's going to be very different. But if you can really take ownership of your mind, take ownership, I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to dedicate and commit into this path and do whatever it takes. And yes, I'm going to be confronted with lots of fearful thoughts and I'm going to have a lot of doubt. They're just doubt thoughts, but usually they're believed in. And not many people's minds escape the fear. And he talks about it in the back of the Course about being unsettled. That's that's very. It's like he's unsettled. Well, I felt like I sort of hit something that felt like terror. But he does say that ego goes from suspicious to vicious, and so that is normal. This is what we have to expect. Okay, I've got doubt. Okay, I've got fear. Okay, I've got thoughts. You're not worthy enough to do this. You're not good enough. Everyone else is, this path is rubbish. Just those thoughts. will come and go. So all you need to do is notice those thoughts and then just allow them and just say, okay, I recommit. So committing into a spiritual path and recommitting. So basically you probably need to, I wrote my commitment out, but you probably need to sit down and recommit every so often to really bring, you might notice that you've started to maybe watch more television or something. You're like, okay, I'm using that as a distraction. You know, you'll know. You can't fool yourself in the end. You will know if you want this with all your heart, you want the peace of God, the peace of mind, you just, you'll go after it. And, you know, well, the thing about it is that God or perfect love or creation or the whatever, if there's a loving entity and it's formless and it is in your mind, it wants to help you. It's something that loves you just so much. It's created you as love, and its whole purpose, it's like all the angels sing when you say, you know, I want to join with this love, and it all, you know, I think it says in the Course, you know, 1,000 angels come in to help you. So there's a lot of help. There's the guide is there to help you. And so it's just, for me, I know a lot of people think that meditation is not part of it. To me, it's a big part of it. But I've not meditated like for hours and hours. I find half an hour to an hour sufficient for my mind to really quieten. And as I said before, this is awakening. It goes deeper and it's endless, it's infinite. There's no end to what this mind, this limitless, boundless mind. So I'm never at a stage where I say, okay, I've got it. And the word devotion has been coming up a lot for me in the last few days. And I put on, last night I was on YouTube and I clicked on a Robert Adams YouTube clip and I listened to it. It's just an audio. And he was talking about devotion and just devote your devotion to God. And so it really has to be this heart-opening devotion to God, to the love. And so I've sort of already talked for half an hour, but what I wanted to do was read from a section of the Course, and I'll put this as the topic on this YouTube clip that I'm recording. It's a friend of mine's son sent me a message. He started studying the Course in the last few years, and he sent me a question just saying that he got to chapter 21, section 2. It's called the responsibility for sight, and there's a section in here about being responsible for what we see. So he was asking me, what does this mean? And I wrote to him and I said, when I saw that, I felt Spirit saying, do your talk on Sunday about that, and that will answer it for him, but it'll be recorded for anyone else that would like to listen to it. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the Course. I've got the blue FIP. I think it's the second edition. Excuse me. So it's called Section 2, Chapter 21, The Responsibility for Sight. We have repeated how little is asked of you to learn this course. It is the same small willingness you need to have your whole relationship transformed to joy. The little gift you offer to the Holy Spirit, for which He gives you everything. The very little on which salvation rests. The tiny change of mind by which the crucifixion is changed to resurrection. So when he talks about crucifixion and resurrection, I know there are sort of religious terms, but what he's talking to is the ego is like crucifying us with its thought system, and resurrection is just a clear awareness, a clear state of awareness of love. And being true, it is so simple that it cannot fail to be completely understood. So he's saying it's very simple. And it is true. Rejected, yes, but not ambiguous. So truth is true, but it's rejected. And if you choose again it now, it will not be because it is obscure, but rather that this little cost seemed, in your judgment, to be too much to pay for peace. So over and over throughout the course, he talks about how our mind, the ego mind, says that there's going to be a price to pay to have an awakened mind, to have a mind that's peaceful. And it's a constant barrage of lots of ingenious ways of the ego says you'll go mad, you'll lose your friends, you'll have no money, you'll be a blabbering idiot. Even someone on the retreat that I did it all about what's holding you back from awakening, and we had to write out what the ego's thoughts were. What the ego was saying was the sacrifice to awakening, and one of the ladies there said, "Oh, he's telling me that I'm going to start a cult." and I'll become like a megalomaniac. So even the ego has got lots of little thoughts that awakening is some sort of, you won't have your faculties. It says that you won't be able to think clearly, and that your family will leave you. They'll think you're strange. No one will love you. Because you'll be too different. You can't go past these thoughts of what the ego tells us, that it hides them. You've got to be really careful, because the ego hides lots of things in our minds. That's why we have to be like a scientist. Like, what are my thoughts around that? And what's hiding behind that? And what's hiding behind that? Yeah, that's someone's just saying, for Christ's vision and the gift of sight, no sacrifice was asked. No, there's no sacrifice. So I also, one of the questions we asked at that retreat was, talk about an awakened mind that you know of, and describe the attributes of that person, that mind. And so what the reality is they're usually pretty happy. They're usually really kind and loving, and they're getting on with their life. There's a lot of awakened minds that aren't teachers, and Like for me, I do this little bit of teaching and I do a couple of groups and one-on-ones, but, you know, I'm now working as a carer for a paraplegic, and so it's don't even have to even get rid of the idea that an awakened mind is someone that goes around doing retreats and teachings, even though I only do a couple of retreats, but we need to even be free of what, when you awaken to this love, what it's even going to look like. You can't hold any idea in your mind of what anything is like, because you need to be in the I don't know mind, the free mind of where the spirit of love is going to use you best. And it might be just to be a mother, a plain ordinary mother in a family, and that's where you're meant to be. It's to be free of how it looks, because I remember thinking, saying to Spirit, so when you awaken, you become a teacher and you travel the world. He said, no. He said, no. That's like a very small percentage of awakened minds teach. Most of them are just in the community, just teaching, but in a different way, just extending this love and just helping others. And so was led to do this particular job where I'm just caring for a paraplegic, just looking after him, shower him, just with him, and just loving him and helping him. And that's really all it is. I don't know how long I'm going to be there or what I'm going to do next, because that's where I am now, and it's just living in the present moment as it is. I don't have any plans, and the plans just come in, and that's there's no sacrifice with that, because it's joyful when we have the Holy Spirit's plans. We trust. There's not even a trust, because we're trusting. We're naturally trusting. We don't go out of trust. So I'll just continue on with the responsibility for sight. This is the only thing that you need do for vision, happiness, release from pain, and the complete escape from sin. All to be given you. Okay, so I want to just read that again, because this is the start of the section that I want to talk about, and this line's important. So I'm going to read that line again. It's at number 2. And we're going to be reading a little paragraph that he's written, and he's talking about this paragraph now. And he's saying, this is the only thing that you need do for vision, happiness, release from pain, and the complete escape from sin, all to be given you. Okay, so it's just saying this is the only thing you need do. Okay, so we'll read it in a minute, but that's very clear. Say only this. That's really quite direct, isn't it? Say only this, but mean it with no reservations. For here the power of salvation lies. Now, salvation, another word for salvation can be enlightenment. Say only this, but mean it with no reservations. For here the power of salvation lies. Now, this is quite an interesting thing that he's written here. I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Now, that last 2 lines, they're quite startling. But I'll read through this line by line and just flesh it out so we can really get to, hopefully, understanding what this is about. So I am responsible for what I see. Okay, so when he says see, this word see means perception. Okay, so I am responsible for the perception of what I see. So when I'm perceiving, now perceiving is like a filter. So if you can imagine, you've got glasses on that have got a green tinge to them, you're going to see the world as green. And if you've forgotten you've got green tinted glasses on, you will just say to people, the world's green. And you'll forget that you've got your filter on. So this filter is in our minds. And when it says, I am responsible for what I see, he's saying I am responsible for what I perceive. I am responsible for the filter in my mind. So the filter in our minds is the ego. So the ego is perceiving. So the ego are the thoughts about what I'm seeing. So what he's saying, I am responsible for what I see, that is going to say that all the thoughts that come into my mind come from the beliefs, right? So I've got all these beliefs. So say I had a belief in my mind that a mother should be kind to me, that mothers are kind, mothers should be kind. That's a belief. And from that belief, I would be upset if mothers or my mother wasn't kind. So that is a filter. These beliefs are filters, and there's thoughts that I get. So when I have that belief and I hold on to a belief that that is how things should be, the thoughts that come from that belief, she's not very nice, she should be different, she's a mother, she should be nice. So when it says I am responsible for what I see or what I perceive, it means that I am responsible for my thoughts, for believing my thoughts. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. So when he's talking about the I, he's just saying the I that he's talking about is the ego I in our minds. So I'm choosing the feelings I experience. So when I choose, and all this, what you've got to remember is that this is unconsciously done until it's conscious. I choose the feelings I experience. So when I have a belief that mothers should be a certain way, and reality, I will find that. I will find, because what will happen is, say for example, I see a mother smoking around her children. I might get a feeling of upset. I might have a thought. I can't have a feeling without a thought. So the thought would be, that's a bad mother. Mothers shouldn't smoke, because I have a belief about mothers already, how they should be. So those thoughts arise, and then I get a feeling. And the goal I would achieve, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. This goal is for the world to be how I want it. This goal is, subconsciously, the ego's goal is, I want the world to be a certain way. And so from that goal, I'm choosing the feelings. Now, this is all happening unconsciously, but what is really directing us here is to be really, really clear about all these choices we're making with the ego thought system. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Now, this can be like, when I first read this, I was like, how dare you tell me that I asked for my father to be really awful to me. And then I just went and through having a look at all these, having really going deeply into my mind, I went, of course, I set him up because this responsibility for sight ties in with projection. So what happens is I projected my hatred of self, which is the ego hates us, and it's because the ego's it's the idea that I separated from God, but I don't. That's not in my awareness. So I feel that I'm on my own, and I feel that I've separated from God, and I'm on my own, and I have to make it in this world on my own. So these are the ideas that it's all that's everything's sort of hidden in our unconscious mind. And so what happens is this guilt that we've separated from God is so out of our awareness that all we can feel is this hatred and unworthiness. We can connect with that. That's something that most people can connect with. Yeah, I feel this deep unworthiness. I feel this, there's something wrong with me. Usually that thought, there's something wrong with me, is the key egoic, it's like the clangor of the ego that tells us, and it's a whole part of a false thought system that we've bought into. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for. So getting back to this is true, but what you've got to do is you've got to see that it's not you. You've not consciously asked for someone to do this to you, but what it is, it's unconsciously asked for. But you will start to, as you work with this idea, you will see that you set it up, because what I saw was that I projected all my hatred and guilt out onto my father, and then I found it in his actions. So I put the meaning on everything he did. I put a meaning on. So I found it there, and I talked about it constantly, about how my father didn't love me. He didn't do the proper father things. I put all the meaning out there onto his actions, and so we will find a scapegoat. It'll be someone, anyone, the ego will project onto them, and then what happens is it projects it out, and then it finds it, and every little thing that person does will be so upsetting to you, to your mind. It'll be, and you'll just say, that, why did they do that to me? Why are they doing this to me? And so this is a really hard one to get your mind around, because I had to see that I actually asked for that. When I say I've asked for it, it's not like me as Cate asked for it. It was you have to realise that it's an unconscious thought system that's not really in awareness, and that you're unconsciously projecting it out and then finding it there and then getting upset about it. And if you can lose the idea that it's personal, that this person who you've projected this onto, if you can go through all the grievances that you've got with this person and work with the Holy Spirit to undo that it's personal. So yeah, leave all decisions to the one who speaks to God. Yes, so we have to come to the Holy Spirit with this, because we can't, when we read something like that, we have to understand it at a different level of mind. We can't understand it with the ego, and because we would just get like, oh my God, I didn't ask for this person to be so horrible to me and never support me and act like very unloving to me. But what we have to see is that these teachings are saying that the cause is in our mind, and this character in the dream is just being his character. He's just acting out his role. And what our minds do is they project the hatred and guilt out, and we don't even know we've done it. And then we find all the hatred coming back at us, and then we get very depressed. And so we need to really look at these deep, so the only way to really get to the insight of how we've, that everything that seems to happen to me, I've received as I've asked. What he's saying is that your unconscious mind has gone out and found what it wants, because it wants someone to hate you so that you can then hate them, and you won't look within and find it. You won't go within. So if it can be in another body, you'll stay mindless. You will constantly say that that person hates me, and that they're the problem, and that they need to change. And that's the way the ego keeps you from looking within. It will constantly say the problem is outside you. So so what Jesus is telling us is that if you can really embrace this teaching and say, I have projected this onto this person, and I wanted someone else to be the bad guy. I didn't want it to be me, and I did it unconsciously. So I'll just read, we've only got a few more minutes. I'll just read this little bit more. Deceive yourself no longer that you are helpless in the face of what is done to you. Acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. Okay, so that's beautiful. He says it so easily, but it does take time to really go within, and you know, this takes a while. Well, it did for me to actually really get this deep understanding that I was actually projecting everything, all the hatred and within, because this awakening is not about, it's actually about undoing all the blocks. It's not about la-di-da-di-da. You have to go within your mind and find all these things. It's like you truly have to be very committed to looking at all the things that you're upset about and have them transformed by the voice that knows how to help us. It is impossible for the Son of God to be merely driven by events outside of him. There you go. It's impossible for you to be driven by events outside of you. It is impossible that happenings that come to him were not his choice. Wow. So we've chosen it, but it's so out of awareness or our consciousness that we've chosen this, and that's what it is we need to really go. We need to be so dedicated to looking at what we really need the help of the Holy Spirit with this, because we can't undo these really, really deep beliefs and grievances ourselves. So it's coming up to the hour. And I'll just say a quick blessing. I hope I was clear enough on that on that teaching. But so thank you again to Regina, David, and I see you there, David, and all the others, Ken, Diana. Oh, Diana's there. Thank you. And it was lovely listening to you, Diana. I really enjoyed your book, and I'd like to get a copy of that. So anyway, blessings, everyone, and I'll give the microphone over. I love you, and I bless you, and I honour you, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. So I'll just turn the mic back over. If I can. Hang on, why is the mic not moving? Let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay, bye-bye.